to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
And as you breathe in, just imagine you're breathing in a feeling of calm and relaxation, releasing any tension on the out-breath. Breathing in that feeling of tranquility and releasing any noise. That's it. And as you breathe in and breathe out, I want you to pay attention to any noises other than my voice. That might be the ticking of a clock. That may be the sound of traffic on the road outside the window. It may be even voices or footsteps or noise outside of the door. In a strange and contradictory way, the more that your conscious mind is distracted, the better able I am to influence your unconscious mind. So much of what you do and what you think is not consciously decided, but just patterns that are running. And sometimes you do your very best things without thinking. That time when you throw a scrunched up bit of paper into a bin and it goes in straight away. Many things that you do without thinking happen to almost be perfect. And yet, when you try and replicate them consciously, you get nowhere near the same result. So allow your conscious mind to be distracted as I communicate directly with your unconscious mind. And I want you to imagine that you're in a grand hotel, very far away. Not just far away in distance, but far away in time. And perhaps this hotel is in a different country, in a different city. But I want you to imagine that you're in a room, a large room. And this room has the most comfortable bed that you can ever imagine. And I want you to imagine that you're just resting on the surface of that bed, and as your head sinks into the pillow, I want you to imagine it's the softest, most comfortable pillow that you've ever rested your head on. There's something about the decoration and the energy in this room that just feels so relaxing. And all I'd like you to do is, again, just to focus on your breathing in calm and relaxation, and breathing out any tension. And with each and every breath, your whole body is getting looser, heavier, more and more deeply relaxed. That's it, almost feeling like you're about to nod off because you're so deeply relaxed. Imagine that your arms, your legs are all loose and limp, and you can just sink into that bed, feeling more and more relaxed than you've ever felt. That's right. And I want you to imagine that as you breathe in that feeling of relaxation, you can literally imagine any tension in your body melting away. Imagine it melting through your body, perhaps even through the bed, leaving your body entirely, and what remains is just the perfect balance of relaxation. Because the kind of tension that you need when you're standing or walking isn't necessary when you're lying down. The kind of tension you need in your jaw or your face when you're talking or thinking isn't necessary if you're lying down. And just allow your whole body to consider any and all tension. Scan your body almost like a radar. And if your unconscious or conscious picks up on any tension, just recognize it, identify it, and on the outward breath, allow it to let go now. And that's it. taking you deeper and deeper relaxed. And I want you to imagine what it would be like to be so relaxed on that bed, to just fall asleep. And you've done that many, many thousands of times, so you know exactly what it's like to fall asleep. And imagine that you have fallen asleep, and you are able to see yourself on the surface of that bed, head sunk into the pillow, fast asleep. And I want you to explore the hotel room, perhaps look out the window, see the view, get a sense of perhaps where you are in time and location. Look at the rooms attached to the bedroom in the hotel. Maybe there's pictures on the wall. Perhaps there's a particular colour of the carpet. And I want you to go into a different room other than the bedroom. Perhaps some kind of lounge area attached to the room. And I want you to get a sense of change. I want you to sit down on a chair in that other room, because very shortly I'm going to communicate to a different part. A part perhaps that just loves eating certain types of food at a particular time of day. And as you sit there in that chair, I'd like to communicate to the part that really, really enjoys things like jam on toast, perhaps chips, or the buns that accompany a burger. And when I'm communicating to that part, just let me know by nodding your head. That's right. And first of all, I'd like to thank you. Thank you for the role that you play. The role that you play is all about preservation. Because at some level, if we don't enjoy food, we wouldn't exist as a species. There is a reason why the nose, the taste buds, the eyes are all connected to the process of eating. Because eating is designed to be enjoyable. And if it's the case that you really enjoy food, let me know by nodding your head. That's right. And that's a good thing. But there's also something equally valuable as the pleasure that comes from food. And that is the pleasure of being healthy, full of energy, the compliments that you receive from other people. Because as a direct consequence of this desire to really enjoy food, the unintended consequence is that right now it's becoming harder to lose that body fat. And I know that your intention isn't to increase the amount of body fat. The intention isn't to sabotage or impede the amount of weight that's being lost. I know that your intention is that of joy, pleasure, gratification, and if that's the case, let me know by nodding your head. That's right. And that's a good thing. But I'm just wondering if you'd be receptive to still do that, but do it even more. If you could enjoy your food even more than you have done previously, if that is something that you'd be receptive to. Because I want you to imagine what it would be like to simply not eat for 3 days. And within the mind, we can imagine what that would be like. For the first few hours, nothing would change because there's enough energy just in your blood. And then perhaps after maybe 5, 6, 7 hours, there would be a tightening of the stomach, maybe a rumbling of the stomach. And at that point, there might be a desire for more food, but just distracting yourself can get over that feeling. Maybe even a glass of water. Because that length of time is easily done because you do it every night. In fact, you're very accomplished at being able to go without food for maybe 12, 14, 16, 17 hours sometimes. And isn't it the case that when you haven't eaten for maybe 16 or 17 hours, the first bite of that food just tastes amazing? And there is a very powerful principle known as delayed gratification. The longer you delay, the more enjoyable it is. Because if it was the case that you could eat non-stop, food would taste as bland as paper, and you would lose the enjoyment that you seek. So having a gap in between meals is what gives food pleasure. But I want you to imagine again those 3 days, because perhaps after a full day of not eating anything, perhaps you'd be thinking about food a bit more. Maybe you'd feel a bit tired. But I want you to imagine that you're able to persist, because after 24 hours your body starts entering a state where it starts learning how to turn body fat cells into energy. And whether you call it ketosis or just a body's ability to adapt as it would do to your ancestors, if there was a famine, the body just adapts and changes depending on what's around and available. And perhaps after 2 days, 48 hours, your body gets pretty good at that. Not only is your body now learning how to take the energy from your body fat, but also there is a process called autophagy which enables your body to heal what needs to be healed, and consider it almost cleaning out the rubbish inside your body. Because normally your body is so busy digesting food and processing that it doesn't have the resources and energy and biochemistry to give your body a good spring clean. And doesn't it feel satisfying when you do that in your house? You don't spring clean every week, but every now and then the house is really cleaned, and there is a sense of satisfaction that comes from really doing that. And then perhaps after 3 days, your body has just got used to getting your liquids from water and your energy from your body fat. In fact, you sleep better the less you eat. And that's a strange thing. But I want you to imagine that 3 days have passed and you haven't eaten anything. Something as simple as a piece of fruit, or perhaps a burger, or perhaps your favorite meat. Any of those things would just taste delicious. It would taste like paradise, because the lack of time in between the meals would mean that anything tastes amazing. And if you agree with that, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to get a sense that, what if there was a way that you can enjoy food more? Because there is one food that tricks the brain into thinking it's pleasurable when it really isn't. And these foods are known as the 3 white poisons. Not because they're toxic and they can kill you instantly, but because they poison the brain into thinking they're pleasurable when actually they're not. And you wouldn't voluntarily drink bleach from under the kitchen sink because it's poisonous. But sometimes things look like they're pleasurable and actually are not. And I want you to consider that there are 3 white poisons. The first is refined sugar. If you that really seeks pleasure from food just had a whole kilo bag of sugar, it might be enjoyable for the first few seconds, but very soon there would be too much sugar in your blood, and your body would be forced to turn that excess sugar into fat to stop you from dying. That's how poisonous that sugar would be. Diabetics that become hyperglycemic or don't have the insulin to regulate are at risk of genuine death. And I want you to appreciate that refined sugar is deadly. In fact, the only thing that the body can do to stop sugar from killing you is to turn it into fat. And you don't want that fat on you. There is a second white poison, also something refined, and that is flour. The kind of flour that you see in bread, or the base of a pizza, or in a cake or a biscuit. Not quite so poisonous as the refined sugar, but something again that enables your body to perceive it as pleasurable simply because it gives you energy quickly. But if there was that all-you-can-eat buffet with the most incredible foods created from all the very best chefs, would you really spend your time and the limited space in your stomach eating bread rolls and slices of bread? The real pleasure comes from food that has flavors and tastes and textures. But foods that contain too much of that refined flour, isn't it strange that the texture is almost like wallpaper paste once it's chewed? Think of eating a slice of toast or a piece of bread. Even if the smell looks good because it's tricking your brain, once you chew it, it's all mushy, gooey, full of the kind of things that clog up your intestines, make it hard to digest your food. And so many people every year die of heart attacks, not because they have too much sugar, but because they have too much of this refined carbohydrates. These crisps, bread, biscuits. And the third white poison is salt. And I want you to notice how similar all three of these white poisons are when they're just there in their packets. The sugar sometimes does look like salt, and you can easily trick someone into putting salt into their coffee just by putting it in a different container. The flour looks a bit softer and a bit more fine, but these are three white powders, highly toxic and poisonous to the human body, and yet bodies that are not trained or knowledgeable perceive them to be pleasurable. I want you to think about all of the most addictive foods, and isn't it true that they contain either salt, sugar, or flour? This is something that food companies have known for a long time, because all three of these things are very cheap to make and highly addictive. And I want you to think of the consequence of a diet that only would exist of foods high in salt, sugar, or flour. To begin with, they would be pleasurable, but very soon everything would taste bland. Too much sugar would just mean that you're constantly feeling lethargic. Your skin would change. Your eyes would get dull. You'd be constantly fidgety and anxious and perhaps even paranoid. And I want you to get a sense that if these foods were truly pleasurable, then why would they make you feel that way? Because if someone spent 30 days on processed foods high in salt, sugar, and flour, and it makes them sick, isn't it the case that those foods really are poisonous? Because someone could spend not even 30 days but a whole year only eating salads and fresh fruits, and they would be healthier at the end of that year than at the beginning. There are foods that harm and foods that heal. And given that your primary desire is pleasure, how much pleasure can you really derive from eating poisonous foods? I'd like to suggest an alternative. To really get pleasure in the short term and the long term, there are ways to enjoy even more pleasure than you've already been enjoying. And the first is to enjoy extended periods of time in between eating. You're already doing this, but there could be opportunities to do it even more. So maybe once a week by having a day that you just don't eat, and imagine how good that food will taste when you start eating again. And if you like the idea of food tasting better than it's ever tasted before, let me know by nodding your head. Because all you have to do is to enjoy the wait. Sometimes the anticipation makes things so much more pleasurable. And if you could have whatever you wanted on demand, the pleasure would decrease. But sometimes anticipation and delay increases the pleasure. And if you accept that suggestion to be true, let me know by nodding your head. That's right. And the second thing, to increase the amount of pleasure, is to choose foods that help you in every way, that are not just pleasurable to eat, but also pleasurable for every other part of your body. Foods high in sugar or salt might be pleasurable for the taste buds, but they're harmful to the heart and the digestive system. They increase the amount of body fat. But there are foods that are pleasurable to eat and enable the body to work even better. And many of these foods are already your favorite foods. Perhaps these are lean meats or fresh avocados. Perhaps these are combinations of certain fruits, because the processed version of a real raspberry or strawberry might be the jam. And yes, there's a bit of fruit in there, but it's mainly sugar, the poisonous bit. So what if you had more of the original things, the fresh fruits, and less of the processed things? Then you could derive more of that taste and flavor and enable your body to be flooded with those micronutrients that can help you in every way. Help your health, help your energy, help your emotional states. And by doing this, delaying the time between meals and choosing foods that are natural and that don't contain those 3 white poisons will mean that you can secure even more pleasure from the food that you eat with no consequences to any other part of your body. And if you accept that this would be a way that you can have even more enjoyment than ever before, let me know by nodding your head. Yeah. So what I want to suggest is that we take a trip downstairs. I want you to imagine that you leave the hotel room and there is perhaps an elevator that takes you to the basement, and in this basement is going to be the largest buffet restaurant that you've ever seen, with every type of food available. And I want you to imagine that you're entering this restaurant having not eaten for 3 days. And when you open the elevator, you're there, right there in that restaurant. Except this restaurant is completely empty apart from you. But there is counter after counter of every possible variety of food that's ever existed. Now I want you to imagine that you're joined by another part of your unconscious mind. You are the part that wants pleasure from your food, but you are joined by another part that wants a future of health, vitality, and having a lean body. And you can choose whatever you want in this buffet, so long as both of you agree. Now, it might be that this part that wants a lean body only wants to eat kale and spinach, and perhaps only drink water. But they can't do that while you're there and you want pleasure. But equally, you can't run off and just eat toast or desserts or pizza, because the other part also wants a future of being lean and healthy and full of confidence. And I want you to imagine that you're looking around this huge buffet restaurant with so many different types and combinations of food. And I want you to notice that so much of the food would tick only one of your boxes. Maybe just pleasure, but no long-term health benefits, and others only long-term health benefits and no pleasure. And I want you to look around this buffet and find things that both of you agree are genuinely pleasurable, would taste delicious after not eating for 3 days, and would take your body in the direction that you want to take it, physically and emotionally. And when you identify food that ticks both of those, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to tell me what you see. Steak. Steak and chicken. I want you to imagine that you could eat that steak and chicken and it would be not just enjoyable but delicious, and would also take you in the direction, and that's how you get even more pleasure. I want you to continue looking around and see what else. Prawns, excellent. Avocado, nice. I want you to imagine that in the way that you do often in these restaurants, that you have a large plate and you're just piling up that plate with all of these food that ticks both boxes. And each time you put something on there, just tell me what you see and what you put on that plate. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I want you to, that's it. I want you to take it back to the table. And I want you to look at it, and I want you to see the vibrancy of the colours. I want them to become bigger, brighter, more intense. And notice that as you look at it, it looks genuinely appetizing. There is no feeling of missing out. There is no feeling of sacrifice. There is no feeling that somehow you're depriving yourself. What you're doing is you're giving yourself the very best without any of the downsides. That's right. Because the key in order for you to lose weight is to enjoy the process. And by enjoying the process at that main lunchtime meal will enable you to train your body to continue burning fat for hour after hour after hour. And the longer this period does, the more that your body not only loses fat, but gets used to the kind of foods that you enjoy, and is training your body to burn fat. And therefore, as the days pass, there is less desire for any of those other foods. In fact, I want you to imagine that 2 or 3 weeks have passed where each day you're eating the most delicious foods that also train your body to burn fat. And then I want you to imagine that after this extended time has passed, I want you to go to the counters that contain those processed foods with those refined carbohydrates and sugars and salts. But as you look at them, I want you to notice that the food is now turned all to black and white. And as you turn the colour into black and white of those foods, notice that the desire for them reduces massively. But I want you, as you look around this very large restaurants with all the different types of foods, you notice that most of them are in colour, and that very few are now in black and white. And it doesn't cause you any issues at all to eat the foods that are in black and white when you know that it's not taking you in the direction that you want to go, and these other foods are starting to taste better and better with each and every day that passes. Because once you train your body to enjoy foods that don't contain these sugars, salts, and refined carbohydrates like flour, your taste buds take on a new appreciation of real flavor. I want you to imagine that a diet that is high in refined carbohydrates is almost like turning up the brightness on the TV so much that you can't really see the detail of what's happening. And by reducing and removing the refined carbohydrates from your diet, suddenly foods that tasted bland before will now explode with flavor. So the way in which you get to have more pleasure from food is by reducing the amount of foods that trick your taste buds into thinking they taste good when actually they don't. Because you would feel annoyed in so many other areas of your life if people tried to trick you and sell you things for a high value when actually there was very low cost involved. If someone sold you a car that looked good on the outside but had a very cheap engine on the inside, you'd be furious. And that's what's happening with food all the time. Foods are being sold and told to you as being pleasurable, but actually it's the salt, the sugar, and the flour that just tricks your brain into thinking they taste good when actually they're just training your body to become addicted. And now what I want you to do is imagine that you and the part that really is determined to have that lean, athletic, energetic, confident body, I want you to imagine that both of you are now merging into one body. There is the part that likes pleasure, and there is the part that wants this lean body. And I want, again, you to look around this restaurant. Notice that all those refined carbohydrates are now black and white. All the food that is delicious and helps take you in the direction that you really want to go is all bright and colourful. And I want you to notice that you could eat in this restaurant every day for a year and try new and different foods without any boredom, and still be taking your life in exactly the direction that you would want to take it. And if your unconscious mind accepts that suggestion to be true, let me know by nodding your head. Because the thing that's been holding you back all this time is fear of loss. The fear of missing out on certain foods. And once you realize that the average human has only tasted less than a few % of all the possible foods that exist on the planet, how can it be that we're so dependent on those foods that are high in sugar, salt, and flour, when there's so many other foods that we haven't even explored yet? So many varieties of fruits we've never tasted, so many vegetables we don't even know the names of, so many different meats, so many different meals from different cultures and cuisines that we've never explored before. And I want your unconscious mind to accept just how much possibility there is. That if we had a circle, which is pleasure, and a circle, which is training your body to burn fat, the shaded area where those two circles overlap would give you infinite possibilities of food to eat. There is no missing out. There is no loss. There is just pleasure and a determination to move in exactly the kind of direction that improves your health, your confidence, and your whole life. As you leave the restaurant, I want you to get a sense of how fulfilled you feel, not just in your belly where you've eaten, but also a sense that by making decisions in that corner of the matrix where it tastes good and helps you lose weight, there is no guilt, there is no frustration, there is only a growing sense of momentum. As you go back into the elevator up to the floor, I want you to get a sense that what would it be like day after day if that main lunchtime meal was delicious, pleasurable food that also trains your body to continue burning fat? Suddenly it just gets easier and easier. You enter your hotel room, and I want you to get a sense that training yourself is like training anything else. A small child, stubborn, headstrong, that if you tell it what to do, it will rebel, but if you guide it in the right direction where it's acting from its own interests, it needs no more training. It will simply operate that way through its own motivation. I want you to imagine that you're seeing yourself there on that bed, the conscious part that's been asleep all this time. I want you to climb into that version of you, feeling how comfortable it feels on that bed, body all loose, relaxed. But I want you to notice that as time goes on, you can imagine what it would be like perhaps 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now, if you got into the habit of continuing to have your last meal perhaps at 7 o'clock, eat your first meal at lunchtime, but just change that lunchtime meal so it's delicious food that also helps keep your blood sugar levels low, training your body to burn fat. And as you think about the future, not only does it get easier and easier, but you can see what it's doing to your body. It takes effort to store body fat. You just have to eat more calories than you consume and have lots of carbohydrates to trigger the insulin necessary to turn the excess calories into fat. And it stands to reason that the way that you burn that fat is the opposite way round. Eat less calories than you need, keep insulin levels low, and eat the kind of foods that are pleasurable but trains your body to feed on excess body fat from within your body. As time goes on, see those love handles, the fat around perhaps your belly or your legs, your back even, getting less and less and less. And as body fat decreases, confidence increases. And it gets easier and easier to just feel like you can live that way. In a few moments' time, I'm going to count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. You will awaken with a feeling of optimism, but a feeling of excitement that there is a way for you to not just lose weight, but really and truly derive pleasure and enjoy the process. Enjoy those meals, knowing that the more time in between meals, the better that food tastes. And knowing that you can train that part of your body to really enjoy the kind of foods that will help you lose weight by making them the very first meal that you have after not eating for many hours. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.